are very thankful. Take that as our prayer of thanks. We praise you. And may this be a testimony for how you care for us individually in our homes and the problems that now confront us in our families, in our individual lives, and on our campus. You can and will provide for the kingdom of Jesus. So let it be that we trust you. As we go into the study today, would it be that you provide wisdom so that we can understand and hear your voice. In the name of Jesus, amen. Hey, we're in the fifth commandment. You know what the fifth commandment is. Every parent knows what the fifth commandment is. Even if they forget the order of the other 9, they know dead center in the 10 commandments. It's the fifth commandment. Well, just a couple of weeks ago, my wife brought home a new baby. A baby kitty. And it's reminded us all over again, a little bit of parenting, a little bit of correction, discipline, training. The Bible has something to say about that. The fifth commandment, right there in the heart of the Decalogue. But you know what it doesn't have anything to say about? The Decalogue has nothing to say about this. Sibling rivalry has nothing to say about your sisters. Well, you might argue it does. But listen, sibling rivalry. Got some good stories here. When I was about 5 years old, I got my boots stuck in deep mud and couldn't move. After unsuccessfully attempting to pull me out, my sister walked home to get help. I waited in the rain for an hour, and no one came. So I pulled my feet out of my boots, left my boots there, and walked home barefoot, got home to find my sister on the couch watching TV. I've got 2 brothers 10 years older than me. Another one says, for months, they grilled into me the alphabet. A, B, C, D, R, F, K. I had to be reprogrammed in kindergarten. It was embarrassing for me. I just couldn't get A, B, C, D, E. R had always followed D. Here's another one. We convinced my younger sister that she was adopted. That's an old trick. Every family's done this, right? It was fairly easy because she looked a little different than the rest of us. Well, she got back at us because she thought that was a compliment. She was happy she wasn't related to any of us. And she grew up being very delighted, bragging about that fact. I got back from a vacation. My room smelled weird. Found my sister had put months worth of wet diapers under my bed to get me back for something I didn't even remember doing. Ooh, what about this brother who put peanut butter in my ears while I was sleeping on a fishing boat offshore? We had nothing strong enough, no water stream strong enough to remove it. So there it stayed. Another one. I used to bite my own arm and then start crying, blaming my little brother. He'd get in trouble every single time. Well, there's nothing against what they did. The Decalogue has nothing to say about them. But it does have something to say about parents and children. Would you grab your Bibles? Go to Exodus chapter 20. This is where the Decalogue is recorded, Exodus chapter 20, and we're going to go down to verse 12, which is the fifth commandment. Put it on the screen for you. Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land your God is giving you. Honor your father and your mother, that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Enjoyed singing that as a scripture song just a minute ago. This is part of the covenant. This is one of the 10 words in the Decalogue, covenant words. It's an eternal representation of who God is. As he spells this out, who am I to you and who am I asking you to be to me? One of the 5 becomes this invitation, this covenant invitation to honor your father and your mother. If you're just joining us today, maybe here at Campion or online, I invite you to catch up at campionchurch.org. Just because we have already introduced this, that the word commandments, the word law, as we know it, is not even used primarily in Scripture to describe the 10 commandments. We, in English, have come up with that. The Greek and Hebrew is more expressive of 10 words of a covenant. That's how it's introduced at the very beginning, this law, this two-way covenant between God and his people, earth and heaven, is not the law in the sense of the verbiage we've used it as a government, a higher authority coming down and delivering the thou shalt. No, this is a God who says, I created you and I to be in relationship, and this is a covenant in which we can base our relation. Every relationship has it. You say, not every relationship has it. Friends don't have it. Oh, yes, they do. Otherwise, you could never insult your friend. There's a line. There's even an unspoken agreement that there's certain ways you treat your friends. Otherwise, you would never, anything would go. The introduction then of Exodus chapter 20, put it on the screen, verse 1, and God spoke all of these words. That's actually how the Hebrew discusses the commandments. It's words from God in covenant. Cute little story. I don't use cute often, but it is a cute little story. The Majid, which is the Majid is a Jewish itinerant preacher, kind of an evangelist, would come and would deliver sermons. There was a certain rabbi when the Majid would come and begin to preach. Whenever the preacher would say, and God said, or God spoke, this rabbi would be overcome with emotion and passion. He would move and express himself and just go into to almost this strange behavior. The church synagogue knew that in order that he wouldn't disturb the service, they would take him out, where he would stand outside, beat his hands against the wall, and cry as he recited over and over, can you believe it? God spoke to me. Yeah, it's maybe not how we act. It's maybe not how we act at all, which may be what we need to talk about. We have passed over as if God spoke is old and trite. Of course God spoke. What else do you think the Bible is? But do we really understand? Do we understand like this rabbi, Zushia was his name, Zushia? Do we really understand? Do we really know that these words are the very words of an almighty God? To me. Sometimes I think if we realize that, we too would go outside and just cry to the heavens, beating our hands against a wall. You really spoke to me. But God spoke, honor your father and your mother. Let me put a time out, just a time out. And call our conversation to you parents. Melanie and I have something posted in our house. I want to share it with you. No doubt you've read it at least once, if not many times. We've posted it on our refrigerator because that's where the important stuff goes, right? If I had my child to raise over again is the title. If I had my child to raise over again, I'd build self-esteem first and the house later. I'd finger paint more and point the finger less. I would do less correcting and more connecting. I'd take my eyes off my watch and watch with my eyes. I would care to know less and know to care more. I'd take more hikes and fly more kites. I'd stop playing serious and seriously play. I would run through more fields and gaze at more stars. I'd do more hugging and less tugging. I'd see the oak tree and the acorn more often. I would be firm less often and affirm much more. I'd model less about the power of love and more about, I would model less about the love of power and more about the power of love. Diane Lumens. A little reminder, it's a timeout, but a little reminder that this is not a one-way conversation. Parents, don't forget your kids. back to our commandment, Paul picks it up in Ephesians. He says, hey, let me tell you about this commandment. Ephesians chapter 6. We read it in Exodus. Paul repeats it in Ephesians, way back in the New Testament, Acts, Romans, Corinthians. You plow through. You'll find Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Then he goes into the quote, verse 2. Honor your father and your mother. You got your study guide in your bulletin, pull that out, because here's the first blank. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise. Theologians aren't totally sure about all that Paul means by first commandment. Is it the most important commandment with a promise? I believe that's the conclusion I've come to. It is in the heart of the Decalogue, and it contains a promise, because it, as we will find out just shortly, means so much more than our kids paying their respects to their parents. Paul says, hey, I want you to know this is an important commandment. This is an important part of the covenant, and it contains the promise. So that, verse 3, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. But fill in that word promise in your study guide, because we're coming full circle back to it. That's how it's going to end today. Many of the rabbis thought this was the most important of all the commandments. Why? They said it bridges the two. It bridges the first set from our response to God to the second set of our response to our equals. Here in the middle is our response to God and those who he has appointed. So some rabbis say this is the most important commandment. It's the bridge between the first 4 and the last 5. Others say no, it's definitely part of the first 5. Many of the Jews, as they've read the Decalogue, said no, it's 5 and 5, pointing out that this commandment bookends how the commandments begin. The commandments begin with, I am the Lord God that brought you out of the land of Egypt. I freed you. And then this ends with that your life may be well in the land that I've provided for you. They say it's a bit of a bookend. So this concludes the first half of the commandments. Others say, did you notice that every one of the first 5 commandments includes the phrase, the Lord your God, including this 5th commandment? Philo and Josephus both say this commandment is the bridge. It's the bridge between the first half of the law and the second half of the law. It can go either way. It can be part of the 6 or part of the 4. It is a connector right in the heart of the Decalogue. Let me just pause again, though, and just clarify a couple of points of conversation here. Because when we get into the conversation of parenting, there are a couple of things in the culture today that just should be made mention, because we are all aware of them. Number 1, parenting overall is not respected by culture, much less by children. Or not even asking the children. It's not respected by culture. How would I say that? Don't tell me that not a one of you, if you were to answer somebody's question, what do you do? And you said, I am a full-time dad or a full-time mom, would not realize just a little tinge of, that is out of sync with culture. We would all realize it. Not that we are diminishing it at all, but culture is saying, no. Tell me what you really do. Yeah, your mom, your dad. Tell me what you really do. Beloved, if I was the devil, I would do that. I would come at it from culture. Hey, let's diminish the role. And so moms and dads don't feel like that's a credible answer. That's a credible investment. Let's diminish it. I was preaching out in Southern California last Sabbath. Ran into an old friend. He said, yep, quit my job. I've got 2 boys at home. I quit my job. My wife has a great paying job. I quit my job because I need to be with those boys. I have a spouse myself who has committed very little outside of the home. Is it wrong then to have a full-time job if you're a mom or your dad? No, not at all. But don't let for a minute culture tell us that you as a father or as a mother isn't the most important role we can take. Oh, I'm a dad. That's what I do for a living. Oh, you mean how I support my full-time dad job? I go to work as a pastor. Second point, it's a bit sensitive. Parents haven't even respected their own role. Culture doesn't respect it. Parents aren't respecting it. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about the abuse and the neglect. I'm talking about the abandonment emotionally, spiritually, sometimes physically. We are all aware that this is a very real dilemma. I want you to know we have pastors, chaplains on this campus, men and women in our community of faith who I'd love for you to talk to if that's part of your journey. But I want us to go to the Bible this morning looking exactly at what the Bible is trying to communicate. Aware that our culture doesn't honor parents, aware that that many parents don't even honor their own role. But what is the Bible trying to say? So we've acknowledged that. Exodus chapter 20 and verse 12 uses one of my favorite Hebrew words. I say one of just so that I don't ever get caught in a lie and tell you that I have another favorite. But I do believe this is my favorite Hebrew word. Exodus chapter 20 and verse 12. The first word. How does it start? Honor. The Hebrew word is kaved. It's a powerful word. It literally means, in the literal sense, it means heavy or weighty. But it's used extensively in the Old Testament as something more symbolic, as representing. And so it's often translated as glory or honor. Put a couple of verses on the screen. You'll see this word kaved. Exodus chapter 24 and verse 17. To the Israelites, the glory, the kaved of the Lord looked like a consuming fire on top of the mountain. This is what the presence of God looked like. Kaved. It was heavy. It's intense. It's rich. It's glory. Numbers chapter 14 and verse 10. Then the glory, the kaved of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting to all the Israelites. That's the presence of God. This word God uses in a covenant way in Exodus chapter 20 to have towards those who birthed us, who gave us life. He says, have this heavy honor. Seek to glorify them. Wait a minute. There's something more there then. If God is going to use, these are the words of God. As our dear rabbi friend who would be excused from the service would say, God spoke these words. And he chose to use one of the heaviest, most intense words in the Hebrew language. Kaved. Kaved your father and your mother. It's not the only word that God uses, the Bible uses, to both relate to God and to our parents. Let me take you to the Leviticus. You have this in your study guide, so you can fill it in. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 3 says, each of you must respect, that's the Hebrew word yareh, must respect your father or your mother and your father. You must observe my Sabbaths. Interesting, whole another subject, why Moses and God would insert Sabbaths as part of mother and father and mother. But that word respect, yareh, you go later in the chapter, later in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 32. Put that up for you. Stand up in the presence of the aged. Show respect for the elderly and revere your God. Yareh, your God. I am the Lord. In the Old Testament, and many of the rabbinic teachings and understanding. It took 3 to produce life on this planet. God is the primary life giver, and then he used the biology of man and woman. Could it be then that this invitation, understanding what word God chose to use, the very word that describes who his presence is, kaved, and that he often, as we just referred to in Leviticus, uses the same words to describe our response to our parents as our response to God? Could it be that the respect he's asking us, the honor he's asking us to give, goes beyond just our mother and our father, but to the very life giver himself? You know, it's the one thing you never picked in life, that you have it. The very thing that makes you alive, you did not pick, you did not earn, you did not deserve. You have it because someone gave it. Oh, is it just... Well, we can explain it, Pastor, if you need to. If you really need to understand how this works, we can explain it. There's books on this subject. Just a little biology? Not at all. If that's all we are, then we are among all men and women foolish if we are nothing but the result of an attraction between two people. The Jewish scholars are arguing, no. This 5th word of the covenant goes far beyond. It argues for the covenant, for the respect and honor of life. Honor your father and your mother. Why? Because they represent to you your source of life. But God says, by the way, I'm going to use a word that refers to me, my glory, kaved. Kaved your parents, because this is an invitation not just to honor our parents, but to look beyond them and honor the source of life itself. Beloved, there is something more in that 5th word of the covenant. It's not just taking care of your parents in their old age. Oh, sure. Take care of your parents in their old age. It's no surprise that the devil has given special attack to this commandment, this covenant word, because it represents the life giver. So he's twisted it. He's made it abusive. He's given us every reason in the book to neglect it, to forget it, to move on without it, because we can't trust our parents. But wait a minute. Are any of the covenant words based on somebody else deserving it? Are you telling me that the commandment, the covenant word, thou shalt not steal, is based on the other person's conduct? Thou shalt not murder? Well, just murder, don't murder the nice people, but the mean people you can have. No. The covenant word is not based on someone else's action. It is a covenant between us and God. Our parents are little to do with our reaction to this covenant. It's between us and God. This applies to all. David Baker, writing the book, The Decalogue, I read it this summer, shared some out of it already. Let me put his words on the screen. The validity of the 5th commandment is not dependent on having perfect parents, but on the role of parents as God's representatives in giving life. It applies to all. Beyond the parents, beyond your mother and your father, there is a life giver, and he chose to give you life. It's natural to treat well those who treat us well. Jesus points this out on the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5, 46 and 47. He says, yeah, of course, those you like, you're going to invite to lunch, but why don't you take care of your enemy? By the way, let me remind you that the Sermon on the Mount is Jesus' version of a sermon on the law. It's those Matthew 5, 6, and 7 is Jesus talking about the covenant law. Well, back to Baker, he says, the Decalogue, that is the law of God, challenges the people of God to go further than that. It reminds us of our origins while pointing us to the future. The commandments of God, the covenant word that he's given to us, says this is bigger than what man or woman, parent, does to you. It's bigger than that. It's you and me. And this commandment in particular reminds us of our origins. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long, both your beginnings and your future. So, what's the commandment really saying? The commandment is really inviting us to live our life to honor the source of life to the fullest. To honor the life givers, both our earthly life givers and our heavenly life giver. We did not choose life. It was chosen for us. God, the master creator, put you together. He said, no. I know the science. It's mom DNA, dad DNA. You know what? You're not the only option in that biology. God said, of all the options, I'm bringing this one. Oh, God uses biology, but still, in the midst of biology, God is giving the life. Man and woman, husband and wife, mom and dad, on their own could not create life. Beloved, in my reflection, it's almost as if we live our lives as if we earned it. Like there was some sort of pre-existence in which I qualified for life. There wasn't. God chose to have you. I've been reciting all week Malachi 3 and verse 17. He will gather his gems, his jewels. That's you and that's me. So the invitation of the fifth commandment, the fifth word of the covenant, is then to honor the origin, the giver of life, both our earthly and our heavenly. So I rewrote the commandment. These are my words. This is my translation. Honor that your life was never your own. Live to glorify the one who gave you this life. And I, that is the God, I, that giver, will be able to trust you with life forever. The fifth commandment points back to your origins. Honor the gift of your life, and so that I can trust you with life forever. Oh, that's nice. Except there's a perfect storm that we've encountered in our culture today. It has two ingredients. Two storms come together to make that perfect storm that have demolished this. That's all right. You want to be on the front row for this sermon? Go ahead. Two ingredients to create the perfect storm. Number one, put it in your study guide. Our world today honors the younger. Hey, we do everything we can to stay as young looking as possible. I'm not trying to tattle on my wife at all. She's a beautiful young lady. But she said, hey, put this on. Put this on. Your face has been in the sun. I put it on. I said, hey, what is it, by the way? She said, it's anti-aging cream. You gotta tell that up front. You gotta tell that up front. But our culture says, no. The young are the future. The young are where we need to invest in. You want to be young looking. You want to be young. That's the Western society. Glorifies youth. And young people, listen, we desperately need to raise up an army of youth for the cause of the kingdom of Jesus. There is nothing wrong with youth. But what we have done is denigrate those of older years with wisdom and maturity. Honor your parents? Okay, I'll honor my parents. I mean, if I have to. They don't really know what they're talking about. I chuckle all the time. I have kids in my back seat, high school kids, like 14, 15, 16. They've lived for 14, 15, 16 years, and they're in my back seat talking about stuff that I'm thinking, you guys have no idea, but you're talking like you know it. Oh, and I was that way. Am I still that way? Beloved, let's not denigrate or dismiss who God has blessed us with, the older and the mature among us. Ingredient number 2 that has created this perfect storm: we live in a culture that honors the individual. It's a Pelagian vision where he said, no, you create your own self, your own values. You emancipate yourself from others and from God while you're at it. The notion is that what I believe is right, and those that don't believe I am right or don't believe the same way I believe should be pushed out, should be separated from the group. We should have only us. Well, the problem with that, beloved, is that the only us will get diminished further as they realize there are continued differences. Oh, I've seen it. Hey, you're on my side because you agree with me on this issue. Oh, but now you're not because you disagree on another issue. And pretty soon we whittle ourselves down to only agreeing with those who agree with us. It's a miserable, pathetic circle of people. Beloved, that's the honoring the individual. What does honoring your parents mean? Oh, my parents aren't really up on things. They don't really know. Then that's the right time to honor them. Because you want to honor those with a different perspective. Honor those that may have a different point of view. But our culture honors the younger and honors the individual, which pushes out the community and the parents. I went to Spirit of Prophecy, Patriarchs and Prophets. Let me read for you the lines, and we'll put it up. It will be slide after slide here. Ready? God himself, who has placed upon them a responsibility for the souls committed to their charge, talking about parents and children, has ordained that during the earlier years of life, parents shall stand in the place of God to their children. No wonder God chose to use the word honor, kaved. That's me. They are in my place. I will use them to birth you and to raise you. But it's really me behind the scenes. I will put them in my place. Keep reading. He who rejects the rightful authority of his parents is rejecting the authority of God. The 5th commandment requires children, we don't like that word, requires children to not only to yield respect, submission, and obedience to their parents. Listen to this list. But also, she uses a couple of alsos in here that they're going to catch up with you. But also to give them love and tenderness, to lighten their cares, to guard their reputation. To guard their reputation. And to secure and comfort them in their old age. Here's another also. It also enjoins respect for ministers and rulers and for all others to whom God has delegated authority. Didn't see that coming, did you? All of a sudden, this 5th commandment, according to Ellen White, is not just about your parents. It is about a larger picture of how you respect those who God puts into positions in your life. Ooh. And then you go back up to the list and say, hey, how do you lighten their cares? How do you lighten the cares of those who God has delegated authority to? How do you protect their reputation? Oh, sure, I know you protect the reputation of those who you agree with. What about the reputation of those you disagree with? All of a sudden, beloved, this is not just children to their parents. This is an invitation for us to yield honor and glory to God himself. And some rabbis will actually agree with it. They say, hey, we've reduced it to just biology. Hey, all you have to do is pay respect to the person who birthed you. But what about pedagogy? What about the ones who give you teaching and life instruction? What about your teachers? What about those who God has delegated authority to? It's not just a child to their parents. It's me to those who God has placed in authority. This commandment's much bigger and broader than we've ever given it credit for. Because in honoring the people whom God has given authority to, whom he's delegated authority to, when we protect their reputation, when we lighten their cares, when we yield respect and submission, we are in fact honoring and glorifying the very giver of life. I said, man, God, how do I close this off? Give me a story. I'm looking for a story. Study guide had been printed, all done there. I'm sitting in my home Friday afternoon praying to God. God, what would you say? How would you close this off? What's a story that you would use to wrap this up? He tapped me on the shoulder and he said, why don't you tell the greatest story? The greatest story? What does that have to do with honoring your parents? Why don't you tell, and he just kept, tell the greatest story, tell the greatest story. So I go to the greatest story. John chapter 19, the greatest story. In the moment, Jesus is suspended between earth and heaven. He's restoring the covenant between God and man. It had been broken, it had been transgressed, it had been abandoned and forsaken, and Jesus came to build the bridge to say, no, that covenant is still good. Those 10 commandments, those 10 words of covenant, they are still good. He's hanging there, dying in our place. And he plays out a scenario. John chapter 19. John chapter 19 and verse 25. I have never thought this before. I've never known this. John chapter 19. He says in verse 25, near the cross of Jesus stood his mother. Now, we've always celebrated how Jesus took care of his mother every month. Mother's Day sermon, it's a good sermon. Jesus took care of his mother. While dying on the cross, Jesus took care of his mother. Except if we really played it out and critiqued Jesus, if Jesus waited until he was on the cross to provide for the future of his mother, he would not necessarily be recognized as a great son. You waited until the last few seconds of your life? He'd already cried out, it is finished. And then, because your mother's standing there, then you decide to take care of her? No. She's strategically placed so that Jesus can communicate a message to the world. While he's hanging on the cross, he sees his mother standing there. Verse 26. Verse 26, when Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, woman, here is your son. And to the disciple, here is your mother. From that time on, the disciple took her into his home. And in a moment, he honors his mother. But there's a greater message there. There's a more powerful statement here. While hanging on the cross, crying out, it is finished, Jesus then takes action in honoring his mother, playing out what I believe is a prophetic statement. It becomes a microcosm, a miniature version. What is Jesus doing on the cross? He's restoring the covenant. He is bringing life. He is bringing future into existence. And so he turns back and he looks back at his birth mother and he honors her, making the connection. You honor the origins of your life. You live your life to glorify God, and he will be able to bless you with eternal life. The statement, the action on the cross, Jesus' conversation, monologue with his mother was paying his respects, but it was a greater statement as he died to seal the power of the covenant with us. He says, by the way, let me just teach you one more lesson. Honor the origins of your life, and I will be able to give you eternal life. You know, the same writer, John the Revelator, brings us back up in Revelation chapter 21. He plays out these two next to each other. Jesus, in John chapter 19, Jesus has just cried out, it is finished. He's just given up. Right after he gives his mother away to John, he gives up his spirit. Revelation chapter 21, he cries out, "It is finished" again. But watch this, Revelation 21 and verse 6. He said to me, "It is finished," or "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty, I will give without cost from the spring of the water of life. And to those who are victorious will inherit all of this. And I will be their God, and they will be my children." Plays it out again. "It is finished. I will give you life now, and we will come together like parents with their children, father to their son, to their daughter." Could it be that fifth word of the covenant is more about us recognizing that there is a life giver both on this earth and for eternity than it is about anything else? Could it be that honoring our parents is just a micro reflection of what God is asking and calling us to do in this covenant? I believe that to be true. But let me then tell you that on the other side, the covenant giver, God himself, is willing to commit to you forever to be your father, your life giver and your father. This fifth word of the covenant has much more to do with my mommy and my daddy, and yours as well. I invite you to grab a Connect card as the worship team comes up. Maybe there's a step you need to take with God today. Baptism, Bible study, a commitment. You want to be part of a grow group, you write that in. You don't know how to sign up. You don't know what. You just write your grow group on that Connect card. You're a first-time guest here. You write your information on there. We have a gift we want to send you. Use that Connect card. We'll put it in the offering plate in a minute. But for those of you that may need to call up your mom and dad, say something to them. I wish you would this afternoon. For those of us that need to dial up God and talk to him, I wish you would. God, I'm sorry. I've lived my life as if I was the owner of it, as if I was the originator of it. I want to make my life to glorify you. Would you dial him up? Talk to him.
In the darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes, to fulfill the law and prophets, to a virgin hear the word, from a throne of endless glory, to a cradle in the dirt.
Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn toward you and give you peace until again we meet in worship. Amen.
Thank you for joining us in our worship and study today. We at Campion, as ministry leaders, pray that you've been encouraged in your relationship with Jesus. You're welcome anytime to meet us right here online or to slide into the service at the church. But here's an extra invitation. We want to be a blessing to you. If today you have a burden on your heart or a petition, our prayer team and pastors would be honored to join you in praying. Or if you're struggling with where God is or have a Bible question, we're here to serve. There are 3 ways you can reach out. We'll have these on the screen for you. You can call us, 970-667-7403, or you can text us.
Text it to 970-279-3432.
Or you can email us, pastor@campionchurch.org. That's pastor@campionchurch.org. And until we meet again, heaven's blessings to you.